Oh,
Okay.
okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third session. We are live here with Mads. Welcome, Mads.
Hello.
Is a principal developer advocate at Div Riots and from France. His favorite all-time book is Alice Adventures in Wonderland.
The best one.
Yeah, is a former front-end developer and DevTool enthusiastic, and he believes that developers are user too. So he's really passionate about developer experience. And
Exactly.
so welcome, Matt. And I wanted to ask you, what made you switch from being a front-end engineer to being a developer advocate?
No, that's a nice question. Because I do love crafting things, but I'm not an excellent developer, an excellent engineer. I'm not a 10x engineer. I prefer to craft things
Mhm.
and try to build demos and test tools, even crappy demos. So before I prefer to help people to get involved in new technologies and new stuff, I'm probably better at transmitting some knowledge and helping people rather than developing stuff and pushing stuff in production because I'm not that good at it.
So you're more a people person than
Yeah,
engineer.
definitely.
That's great. So enjoy the session, everyone. Keep being active. Ask question if you have. We have the Q&A chat, and you have a chance to win a free ebook by our partner Pact. So enjoy, and I hopefully you will learn something new and inspiring. Good luck, Meds.
Thanks. So perfect. Let me put my screen on. And okay, here we go. Nope, not this one. Okay. So this talk is dedicated to static builders. And because right now in web technologies, we're working a lot with with old stuff, finally, with old technologies, because the web is old. I'm old, and I was here at the beginning of the web. Oh my. So yeah, web is old, and we are working with old technology, but we use them to build new stuff. So it means that the regular story is as a developer, or probably as a web developer, I want to build something like websites, but also web apps, but also progressive web apps, but also applications. Because when you're embedding your final application in an Electron container or something like that, you're finally using the browser as a virtual machine to power your stuff. But you are not developing websites anymore, and we are not developing web apps. We are developing real application with the same level of expertise and we are building when we are building a regular desktop application and so on. So finally, I can't recall what the web looks like because I don't use the web technologies at all. I'm using things built upon the web technologies, but not the web technologies, or at least not the raw one, because all those applications are using the same foundations like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because this is the only one that the browser can understand, can handle for you. But they're definitely not the same thing. Building a website and building an application, even when using the same technologies, are not the same thing. So it's not the same challenge. So it's time to free the developer from the tools, because right now we have a lot of dev tools and we have a lot of web dev tools and regular dev tools, but those tools can't handle all the different stuff that you have to build just because they are not the same thing to do. So we have to update our process as a developer. And um, let's start from the Jamstack, because we will talk about static generation. So what is the Jamstack? The Jamstack is based on pre-rendering pages, probably on the server, or directly into your CI if you are a building process. And we will host those static pages in CDNs or in an edge architecture to put the pages closest to the end users. We will use client-side JavaScript to manipulate those pages, finally in the browser, and API services to get access to the different kind of data that you want to host. Okay, that sounds great. And in fact, this is more or less the way we had developed pages in the 90s. I started with PHP in the 90s, and yeah, to be honest, it was exactly that. We were just generating pages on the server and pushing them to the end user. Okay, probably not with CDN and edge architecture, but it's closest to that. And finally, we used JavaScript to have some kind of interaction into the pages. But in the 19th, JavaScript wasn't what it is right now. So it's a modern way to do the same things that we did in the past. So the idea is that we have to handle progressive enhancements with JavaScript in our pages, which means we have to load the raw HTML directly to the client. We have to plug JavaScript logic on it, and we have to call the APIs from the JavaScript side, from the client side, to grab the data and put the data in place when interacting with the interface for our end user interaction and end user interface. So this is what we regularly know as a single page application, which means we should probably not send a blank HTML page to the end user and build everything with JavaScript, but we should render a raw page that could be, SEO friendly and so on. So the user can access to a raw subset of the data, even if the JavaScript is not already loaded and already available to handle the interaction into the page. And then we manipulate the page with JavaScript. This is a progressive enhancement, and it's a raw concept that is definitely the best way to do so. So what about static site generators? They finally take a raw set of data, like a JSON data, with a concept of JSON cascade, and we handle the content in probably a regular format like Markdown. And we put them all, mix them all with template languages. So we pre-render the pages at build time, and we push that directly into our final host, like, I don't know, Netlify, Vercel, whatever you want, or a regular hosting provider. So our usual suspect right now when generating static websites are always the same ones. Jekyll, which was the first one, Hugo, Gatsby, Nuxt, 11t, they are all using the same thing. Grabbing content, Markdown, grabbing data, JSON, merge them all with a template language, generating static pages, and send them directly to the client, and that's all. And for the interaction part and JavaScript part, you don't have any much that tooling available with those specific tools. You have to write everything by hand. So the pros and cons of static site generation is that it's blazingly fast because you just render everything during the CI, during the build process, and you are putting everything directly in production. So you don't have to render things each time your user is requesting a new page. Everything is ready, available. So it's really, really fast to serve. It's more or less more secure in the way that you don't have some kind of server interaction. They are just static pages, just static HTML served by an Apache or something like that. So it's better for end user performance. You can host it anywhere. You can also work offline with it because, when the page is loaded, then it's okay. You don't have to do anything much with it. You don't have to interact with the backend server at some point. But the problem is it's probably more pages oriented rather than application oriented. It's complex when you finally have a big amount of data, of content, because the rendering process is more and more important. You don't have things like a CMS to handle even a headless CMS to handle the contribution of the content, the pages, the data, and so on. So it could be complex when you want to use those technology with a team that could contribute to the content. So all those ways make them really useful, but probably we need a way to improve it. And this is also true because we are more and more moving to a component-driven development era, which means that rather than working on big pages, we are more and more working on small subset of components, because your page is finally a composition of different kind of components, like a header, a navigation, some kind of buttons, a lot of typography in it, the way you are displaying the media, some carousels, I don't know, some call to actions elements at some point, some cards. So we are developing all those components in isolation, and we want to merge them into our final contents. But to develop those components, we often rely on advanced technologies like advanced framework, like React or Vue or Svelte or so on. But because component-driven development is really nice thing, it's faster, it's easy to maintain, it's easy to test, you have shorter learning curves, and also it's a good way to split your different responsibilities in terms of development and which component is responsible of what into your final page and final content. So it leads us to the hydration problem, which is we tried in the past things like, okay, we want server-side rendering for our different kind of components, and because the server-side rendering is handled by the same components that the ones we will use in our final application, we want some kind of isomorphic code base, which means that I will write the code once, and I could run this code to render content on the server side and also handle the client-side logic directly in my component. It's really nice on the paper. It's absolutely not working at all because it's too complex to handle, because the way you are rendering the content on the server is probably not the way your user will interact with it. So you have to mix different kind of logics in it. And it's just a nightmare at some point. So it also can't handle the problem of hydration, which means that what happens when your user are loading the page and want to access the data to modify the content of the page and interact with it? Well, what to do with that? Should I have to grab every kind of hot data when the page is just loaded into the browser to refresh it with some kind of changes and glitches into the interface of the UI layout and so on? It's too complex to handle with just SSR. So we need something more advanced to do that, because we had a lot of try and many fails. But right now, the idea of isomorphic code base is not really working. So it's time to reshape the view in a new way. The idea is that the modern web design right now is so component first. We are working first with components thanks to the component-driven development. We have a logical system of existing components, libraries, and modules, and we can definitely use them. We will work with design systems, and all of that, we should probably increase the complexity of working with our new dev tools. And you just have to see, working with the dev tools on the web apps right now is way more complex than 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or of course 30 years ago. So the idea is that the web fundamentals are here: hyperlinks, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and they will stay here because, once again, they are the only technologies your browser can handle. So you have to rely on them. The concept of partial hydration is this one. Most of your content in a page is static. You don't have to refresh it at some point. So those content can be generated on the server and probably generated statically at the build time. Then you have some kind of dynamic content, and this dynamic content could be server-side rendered. So it could be injected into your page at the serving process and on the request, and on the fly to pre-hydrate some content, or at the build time if you run the build often. Then your client will load the page and will load the super hot data, like, I don't know, if you're on an e-commerce website, some kind of pricing, and your prices need to be adjusted each time the user is requesting the page. This is super hot data. So this data could be handled only on the client side, but that's all. And you will use component server-side rendering because we could use this SSR technology into at the component level directly to pre-render and pre-hydrate component in the back, and then use this component directly into the client side. So all components will load their very own script to handle their very own logic in isolation. This is the concept of partial hydration. And we could couple that with the progressive hydration concept, which is the same thing, but rather than initializing any kind of hydration when your page is loading, you will handle this hydration part with some kind of scheduling, which is, I can load the page with some component in them, and those components will be responsible to load their super hot data, but they will load them at some part in the future. Like, when finally the main thread in your browser is idle, or when the component is entering in the viewport, like I don't know, in an e-commerce website, the cross-selling part, which is at the bottom of the page. You don't have to pre-hydrate it when the page is loaded. Just hydrate it when your user will scroll it and on the page, and finally have the cross-selling entering into your viewport. Otherwise, you don't have to overload your user's browser with those kind of hydration concept he will finally never meet. Or when you have some kind of interaction or some kind of update event that are scheduled in the future. So the idea of progressive hydration is hydration but scheduled in the future. This is the concept of islands architecture or islands pattern. The idea is that your page is like a map, and on this map you've got different kind of islands, which are the header or the sidebar or the image carousel or the cross-selling part or the footer and so on. And some of those islands are static and will be statically generated at build. Some of them will be pre-hydrated on the back, and some of them will be hydrated when the client load the page with some progressive hydration parts with scheduling and so on. So you have to split your final view into some kind of different islands, and which are small embedded apps into your applications that are just communicating together using bus channels or something like that at the row level of your page. And that's all. And this island pattern is a new mental model, but really powerful when you are trying to scale different kind of views in your application. Thanks to the modern tooling, we are now ready to handle that. We've got now tooling like Zero Build Dev Pipeline, which are tools to power your development environment without to rebuild everything each time you are making a change, which means that we are get rid of Webpack and so on, and we are welcoming tools like Vite or Snowpack, which are definitely dedicated to modules and modern tooling with ESN support and web dev server support with out module reloading and so on. So we've got those tools. We've got technologies like MDX or MDGS or MDView or whatever, which allow you to embed your components directly into your content and your web pages. So that's ready for that. And we've got advanced front-end toolkits like advanced front-end frameworks, React, Vue, Svelte, and so on. So we are ready to merge them all into a new era of static site generators, static site dev tools. So what about migrating from an existing Jamstack to something really dedicated to advanced static site generation with island pattern concerns? The fact is, it's not that much to do because we already have templates, which is the big part of the Jamstack. We already have styles. We already have the Markdown content. We already have the front-end frameworks for our components. We just need tools that are ready to mix them all and sell them in a new way. So it's time to bring a new mental model on stage. The idea behind this one is that we have a new generation of tools to do so. With them, we will be able to grab different kind of frameworks. We built different pages using those tools at my company, where we are starting to showcase the power of those tools. So rather than developing a web page, a static web page with different kind of components embedded in them, and where all those components like the nav and the different features on the page and the footer and so on, rather than using the same framework like, I don't know, a React framework, we prefer to make some tests. And we said, okay, this nav is built in Vue.js and it's pretty handy and pretty handsome. So we will use this nav. But for the carousel, we prefer this React action. And for this specific part of displaying the feature, this Svelte component is more interesting. So we finally picked them all and merged them, thanks to those tools, into a single page. So we've got those different frameworks. We're using all of them because we love them in their very specific responsibility for a dedicated component at some point. And we build an entire pages using those very specific frameworks, regardless of the idea of merging and using different kind of frameworks. I don't say that you need to do it. I just saying that it's doable, and it really changes the way that you are handling the development of your new web apps and new web pages. The idea to rule them is that to use a design system to do so. So rather than focusing on web pages, you have to focus on your islands, and your islands are just a subset of different components from the code perspective. So which means that rather than working on a web page in a whole at the same level in just one time, you just have to split it into different parts and ask yourself which kind of component you want to use, and which kind of components you will need for this specific nav or this specific carousel and so on, or those specific form, or the typography and so on. And this is definitely the responsibility of a design system. This in this screenshot is Backlight. It's a design system editor, and it's definitely dedicated on working on those different kind of components. So after that, you could directly import the different parts you are working on in your design system, like importing the nav, importing the features, importing the carousel, and so on, and just plug them directly into your final content using modern static site generators. So the idea behind the design system is that it first it improves the way you are working on development thanks to some kind of best practices. You will variabilize all the content in design tokens, like colors, typography, styles, and so on. You will build in any kind of component, so any islands in your final app or your final views in isolation. All of them will have their very own tests and stories and documentation and design resources and so on. So each component can be seen as an island. Each island is one package, and each package can be loaded and injected into your final page. I mentioned Markdown previously. So how it is working right now, thanks to MDX or MDGS, you have the ability to plug directly regular component into your Markdown. Like you are now, you are able to plug regular HTML content into your Markdown. This is from the beginning of the Markdown specification, but right now, thanks to MDX, it's like a transcription from MDX to GSX, and from GSX to a regular HTML content. So when you are doing this process of conversion, you are just using a common Markdown syntax, look at the different components that are existing into your Markdown, and replace the Markdown into GSX content. So you have a GSX tree, and this GSX tree will be generated after that. So it's really useful. It's accessible to everyone because this is just a simple plugin to add to your stack, and you will be able to handle MDX content. And this is exactly the same thing, because MDX is just related to GSX, so it needs your final framework to be ready to handle GSX content. You can also get rid of it if you don't want to rely on GSX, and if you prefer to use MDG regular Markdown format, thanks to MDGS. So with MDGS, you are the same way importing content in script instruction, in script code blocks, and then run those JavaScript directly from your Markdown. So this is give or take the same way that MDX is working. But this time you are just using code blocks, regular Markdown code blocks, to be executed and rendered into your page, which once again allow you to load different kind of content, like web components that are finally a web standard, and inject them directly into your Markdown, which is totally crazy. You are now able to build content by mixing regular text content and row level content with advanced content like components and so on. You will get access to the scope style, so you won't have to worry about the cascading style sheet and this nightmare that it may lead to. And you will work directly into scoping your styles into your components. So thanks to your design system, you will be able to develop those specific styles for the different components, override them in the components, or re-override them directly in your final content, because in this specific content, you know that you have little variations that you want to handle. All of that will be ready to be handled. So you will work at a smaller level rather than just working on the whole page. So right now we have 3 available tools to handle the modern static site generation with the island pattern in mind. The first one is Astro. It's right now the leader of this concept. It was the first one and still the leader. It has all that you need to generate your content, um, with some kind of file-based routine, some kind of pagination, and so on. It's already ready to handle the data fetching, the hydration concept, and so on. So everything is ready to build in it. We've got a challenger named Eel. Eel is only based on Vue.js, so you have to work with Vue component only, and you can't really mix different kind of technologies, but it's using the Vue dev tools and so on. So if you are involved more specifically in the Vue ecosystem, it's definitely something that you can have a look at it. And we've got Slinkity, and Slinkity is a plugin for Eleventy. So if your existing content generated, statically generated, is handled by Eleventy, then you can rely on Slinkity to add this very specific part of hydration, island architecture, and so on, without touching of your existing stack, because it's just a plugin to add above Eleventy. So if you're already working with Eleventy, it's probably something that you want to look at. But we will stay on Astro right now because it's the widest one compatible with different kind of modern frameworks. So let's have a look at it. The first thing is that it can import any kind of content like GSX or TSX and so on. It works on that. So the Astro syntax for your pages, which is like a kind of templates language for Astro, is using JSX or TSX. It can use JSON to handle the data, super CSS and CSS modules, some kind of static assets. This is Markdown and Markdown-X content, so you don't have to worry about that. It's ready to handle different kind of components. For sure, it's the basics of this technology, and it uses the front matter a lot to handle the different kind of properties and so on. So you can work on super component in Astro, allowing you to declare the layout of your pages, where you will finally plug your different components coming from external technologies like React or Vue or Svelte or so on. You have some kind of file-based routing accessible, so it will handle some kind of generation thanks to different naming in your file system, also with dynamic routes. So you can have access to some slugs that will be exposed as properties inside your components. So you will be ready to handle it. Also with spread params and so on. So it's an advanced routing that is already working directly out of the box. You don't have to worry about it. And everything is converted and statically generated at the build time. And you've got access to these hydration properties, which means that I can have, in this example, like an audio player, and this audio player is something written, I don't know, let's say Preact. And I can add some specific attributes on it, like client visible, saying to my final brother that I have this component, and this component should be hydrated only when the component will pop inside the viewport of the user. You've got access to a client load directive, which is for page loading, request idle, client media for media queries handling. So you can handle the responsiveness of your viewport, and you can force it to be only on the client side, or not on the client side at all, and only on the static side generation. Which is interesting with this technology is that you are not, except if you ask for a client only generation, you don't have to worry about embedding the front-end framework into your client process, because when the component is hydrated and statically generated on the background. It's using the static site rendering technology from the front-end framework itself. So from React or from Vue or from Svelte and so on, which means that we don't need to send the front-end framework into the final end user client browser. We are just regularly generating content on the back and serve this generated content to the front. When you will ask to hydration content, then you will probably serve a small subset of the front-end framework at this point. But for performance issues, this is not a performance issue because most of the things are on the back and not in the client. So the question is, if I am able to mix different kind of frameworks to generate my client views and my client user interface, which frameworks for which component should I use? Because I'm able to mix them. So it will depend of different things. It will depend of the UI performance that you are expecting. It will depend of the bundle size that you want to serve to your final user. So reduce the bucket and ensure that you are serving the less amount of JavaScript possible to your end users. And it will also depend of different number of instances that you will have of the same component in the page. If you have a component for a button and this button is everywhere on your page and you have a lot of instances, this is not the same thing that working on just a really small component. So based on different kind of testing and benchmarks, specifically coming from the EEL tool, the idea is that if you are working on less than 3 component on page, Svelte is a really good one. Between 3 and 10, maybe Solid.js is a good candidate. And other than more than 10 instances, then Preact is a good one. But if you're really looking to something that could be cross-platform and where you can rely on different kind of advanced possibilities without serving a big front-end framework, then web components is definitely something that you have to look at. So right now, we are referencing something that more than 60 frameworks available to develop web components, where you are not serving a big amount of data and a big amount of front-end framework to your end user, because everything is just splitted and you just embed in your web component what you really need. So use those web components everywhere in your app where you can, because it will save you a lot of headaches. The idea is that with Astro, you can use advanced tool like composition, allowing you to build some kind of layouts and use those layouts as a wrapper components for the rest of your views and so on. So it's really easy to split the different parts like we did with templating language, but with all the power of working on components, using props, building some kind of variants and so on. So it's a new way to develop static content using component development. Because under the hood, this is just using the same tool that we mentioned before, like Vite or Snowpack, or relying on existing technology like MDX and so on. You can extend it using different kind of plugin like Vite plugins or Rollup plugin or ESBuild plugins and so on. So everything is ready to be handled and to be quickly adapt to your regular workflow. And because the idea is to serve that in production, it's also ready to push content in production, which means that when you run the build with Astro, you will finally just run one command and it will hydrate everything that needs to be hydrated on the server, prepare the different client asset. You will be ready to deploy it in a Jamstack compatible hosting provider like Netlify or Vercel or Firebase or whatever you want. Just because everything is finally built using Rollup or ESBuild and everything is just prepared and packed. So you just have to serve it at the end and you don't have to worry about anything else. So we have to blend everything because this is the best of all worlds. Static site generation, like a regular static site generation, templating languages, component development era, everything is available. And we are finally mixing all those technologies into a new way to build our web app and websites and applications directly from the developer environment to the production one and to pushing them to the end users. So it's definitely the future, but it's already here. They're ready for production, so feel free to use them. It's time to resync the web, and probably resyncing the web the modern way. So we we have these fantastic technologies of component development and design systems. So we are now ready to use them to generate static content. Thank you very much. I'm Mads. I'm principal developer advocate at DevRiot, where we are working on design system and components, and we are making dev tools on them. So if we've got any kind of question, we still have a tenth of minute, I guess, something like that. I thank you very much for being with me for this session. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mads, for a great session. Do you have any question for Mads? Now is the time. I'm wondering.
It's no. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. So you said that you love Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
What is your favorite character?
The Mad Hatter, for sure.
I had a feeling.
For sure, because he's definitely living in another world, but it's something so wonderful. Well, the rules don't really occur. I mean, there is rule, but not the same rule as in the real world. So this is another way to sing things, and yeah, I do love that. I'm probably a little bit mad at all.
So I see we have a question in the chat. So
yeah.
Any available examples already using this future approach?
Yeah, for sure. If you have a look, at the DevRiot website, so devriot.com, you will definitely see the result of an Astro building, because we are using Astro to power this website or generate the website. In fact, Astro is more and more used in different kind of platform. I don't know if there is big websites or big web apps like e-commerce website or something like this using those technologies right now. But I won't be surprised if it could be the case, because I'm pretty sure that people at Shopify or something like that are working with this kind of technology, or at least testing those technologies, because they are the perfect environment for that. They are flexible, they are definitely agile, and they are able to quickly move to new technologies to handle new kind of system. They're using one of the most advanced design system available right now, Polaris. So they definitely have everything that they need to try those kind of new technologies.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just want to remind you that the most active participant will get a chance to win ebook by our partner. So a little bit of motivation.
This is not always easy, to just to figure out. Okay, this is a new concept. This is new tools. This is new way to think, and being ready to ask some new questions about, okay, it's exciting, and how does it work, and so on. It's more like a concept. So yeah, feel free to have a look at Astro. It's DevRiot, devreots.com. I can put it directly into the chat.
Yeah, that will be great.
For sure. And yeah. So yeah, the idea is more trying to test those new technologies, because they are here. I don't know how many people right now are still using modern tooling like Vite or Snowpack, which are just totally crazy, to use right now. This is just we cut a DevRiot, so we're working on different kind of editors like Backlight, and we use Vite to produce Backlight and to produce the assets of Backlight. And we just cut the time of delivering the content when we are working in our dev environment in just, I don't know, by 10 or 15, something like that. This is just a big cut in the cost, and it's no easy again and enjoyable again to work on those different kind of environment. But there are new tools. We have to try them, we have to test them, and it's sometimes long, to migrate from an existing stack to another. But yeah, be curious about.
Yeah, we want to make sure that we have the community to support the new framework,
Exactly.
the new tooling, the new everything. So we have
Correct. Been there, done that. I won't do that again. Working with alpha version of framework, and you build a big stuff based on it, and finally someday the final version is just breaking everything that's coming from the alpha, and you are just
exactly.
no.
We need to wait for things to be stable, but it's always fun and interesting to try and play with a new tooling and a new approach and stuff like that. So I see we have another off-topic question.
Feel free.
So you had red hair color and now it's blue. What is your next color?
That's a great question. I'm really happy that you ask it. It's not really planned, so it could be we're entering the summer, so it can be something really more hot, something like orange or purple or something like that. But maybe we can try something like a rainbow one. We did it in the past, and it was really great. So maybe a rainbow one.
Maybe you can have a poll and ask the attendants to choose the color for you or that you receive. Just a second. Okay. We have another question. Does it represent some position or has a specific message?
Oh, you mean the hair color? I guess. Well, yeah, probably the fact that it's not a specific message. I don't think so. But the message behind it that be the one that you want to be, and you don't have to be to stick to the rules, and you can just be the one that you want.
I guess it's this important message that applies to everything in life, such as a career path. Like if you want to be more like people oriented, it's okay not to be the tech lead or the team leader and go for a different direction that suits your passion and everything. I think you can relate to this issue or
Definitely. I do agree with you. We need more humanity in our communities and so on. So yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Meds. And I hope all of you enjoyed this session as much as I did. And also enjoy the break. Hope to see you afterwards for another great sessions. And have a wonderful day.
You too, and thanks for having me. It was really great to be with you today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
We are